What you're gonna see me fix, you're gonna probably ask, well, how does that make sense? That's a descent profile. It's not a, during the cruise profile, but it's weird how they have the McDo and the Boeing coded that even with the wrong descent profile, your flight it can be wrong because the plane will think wrong weather at a certain altitude. And I'll show you. My plane is currently set up, and so I'm just gonna go into my cockpit view. My plane's already pretty much set up to show what the problem is, and then I will slide over my sim brief that I'm currently using because I am going to be flying to Dallas Fort Worth. So you guys will be able to see the information that needs to be put in the actual wind information. So it's really dumb. It's really simple. So as you see, guys, the plane is already set up. Everything's already set up. It's good to go with the first officer. So we're gonna go into the FMC, or as you guys know, if you fly Phoenix, it's called the McDo. It's the same stupid thing. I've already pulled the profiles for the weather based on those particular waypoints. But where the game gets confused, okay, is actually in your descent profile. So if you go to DES, you go to forecast, okay? It says altitude of 250, then 15, and then 6. If you guys look at my first officer, we're actually supposed to be flying at a flight level of 350, okay? I will slide over my sim brief into the screen. You guys will see that at the sim brief, our flight altitude for cruise is 350. Now you guys might ask yourself, well, why in the world is the FMC only pulling a max flight level of 250? Well, that's where we have our problem. Because of the fact that the FMC is only pulling up to a flight level 250, if you guys are in cruise or in descent, it's going to try to correct the plane at a 254 degree at 69 knots, thinking your plane is at 250 for cruise, when really you should be at 350. The plane should actually be thinking that when you're going to start your descent, you're starting your descent at 350 because right. I mean, I think we can all agree when you're descending, you start your descent at your cruise level. We're not cruising at 250. This confuses the plane. This is what is actually causing the plane in cruise or in descent path to rock back and forth because your plane is not noticing you're supposed to be at 350. It's thinking you're supposed to be at 250, and then it just goes haywire from there. So what we have to do to fix that, and it's a temporary fix, the developer is going to be working with um, PMGD because they actually have a certain team that works on the FMC. Okay, we need to pull these numbers. We're on descent. We're only going to pull the 350. We're going to pull the 200, and then we're going to pull the 100. And those are the ones that we're going to program into the McDo, or as in the PMGD, it's called the FMC. So, anyone that's manually put in information, just going to manually put it in 350. And then we're going to, for 350, mine is at 252 slash 085. We're going to plug that in. And then we're going to plug in the 200. And then for 200, it's 259 over 053. Then we're going to plug in the 100, which is going to show up as 1,000, but that's how it always is. We're going to plug in 276 for mine, as it says 276 slash 011. And then once those three things are all done, we're going to execute it. Now we're telling the plane for our descent profile that it should be expecting some type of winds at a 252 degree at 85 knots because we are going to be cruising at 350. So now the glitch in the FMC, where under your cruise tab is set for 350, or you might have to change it based on whatever your cruise level is, now matches our descent profile. The problem is the descent profile 250 was not matching your cruise. So the plane gets confused. It's trying to pull the actual winds, because once you get up there and you start flying, this actual wind things will fill in. Okay? So it's trying to compete itself against the actual winds that eventually fill in here on its own compared to what your descent forecast is saying. That's where the plane gets confused. It's because it's trying to fight against two different winds because they weren't set together. The other thing we did, but I don't think it really made a difference, but you can go ahead and do it because we did it for my flight. We actually went down to the destination airport, which I kind of think it was too early, but it worked. Um, and I always forget where to find that stupid destination thing um on the big flight thingy from SimBrief. So I like to, since I use the new Navigraph charts, which if anyone uses Nav 8, you know that it pulls your SimBrief info. So the same info for the descent altimeter will be the same. So just click on the info, open your airport in weather. You see that your pressurization for where I'm going to be going to, Dallas Fort Worth, is going to be 30.35. Now, yes, that could change, but I've never really seen with a sim brief profile of that changing too much. I know if you use things like live weather, like Rex, it can change up and down because Rex pulls the weather from different weather stations. I have not flown with Rex since they've come out with their update. And since I've had this problem with PMGD, I've just flown with stock standard weather. So the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna plug in this 30.35. Now that could change depending on where you fly, because if you don't fly into the US, you're gonna use the 1028. But if you fly into US, it's gonna be the 30.35. So we're gonna plug that in right here, and then we're gonna execute it. That's it. Literally, after you fix your descent profile in the FMC to actually match what your cruise altitude is, you might still notice a slight back and forth in the little line that's up here that is normally on your magenta line when you're flying. You might start notice a little tiny rocking, but you're not gonna notice the huge forcible banks. The only other time, even if you do this profile, that you might notice the big banks is if you have a frame rate drop. But if you're in a situation like me, or even some of you guys, I'm pretty sure you guys got great computers too. Your computers are designed that you should be able to fly this aircraft or even this game with no problems. Okay. And that's literally all we fixed. Because for some reason, when you tell it to request the winds, okay, and insert it, it never puts the actual win based on your cruise. And a lot of people start having problems. Some people go through the whole flight on cruise and not have a problem, and then they'll start having some weird, crazy, violent back and forth rocking as they're descending. This is the problem. So anytime your plane is having major back and forth rocking, regardless if you're in cruise or you're descending, it's because your descent weather forecast does not match where you were actually cruising from. And the funny thing is, talking with the dev yesterday, he was like, no one's ever reported this problem. Most people would just say, "Oh, I got rocking back and forth." That's why if you guys ever looked at the forums, it would tell you if you ever have major rocking back and forth. They would tell you turn off your VNav, your LNav, turn off your autopilot, hit the autopilot, disconnect, reconnect it, and then manually hit each button, and it should correct itself. Well, It could correct itself, but then if you're already in a left bank, now you got to correct your bank before you even fix any of this because you're going to get triggered with bank angles. And well, we all know what happens if you bank too much, you end up crashing. Okay. So that's literally the only thing that we fixed. And the plane flew for the rest of the trip perfectly fine. Um, if some of you guys follow the PMGD group, you'll see that yesterday Phoenix said something about that doesn't make sense. Okay, well, Phoenix is a real life pilot of the 737, so you guys know. I don't know if you guys know that if you guys are in the PMGD Discord. So his comment was it didn't make sense, but then again, he's talking about how the real life plane acts, and no matter what, even if the dev team has told him, they're never going to be exactly perfect to how the real plane is. They can mimic the real plane as much as they want to, but sometimes when it comes to coding, you got to do things different than actually how an FMC is actually programmed. So on the good side of this is a temporary fix. PMGD is going to be looking into this. They said that they will either try to push an update out before the 900 comes out, or they will have a fix for it when they release the 900 along with the EFB at that time. Okay. So until then, that's how we fix it. Um, so I am gonna put it in the air. It's gonna take a little bit, obviously, because of taxi and everything. I got to taxi the right way. If you guys want to stay and see, you can. If you don't, it's cool. Um, so that's what, like I said, that's what fixed the issue for me. Um, I can't say, you know, for a full honesty that that's gonna fix it for everybody. Um, but that's what fixed it for me. Now, of course, I have not used any other weather injections. So I want everyone to know, like, the only weather that I've been using right now is from Microsoft. Um, it seems to be that even though Rex has come out with an update for their weather system, it's still causing lag issues. And the other thing that will cause the plane to not do what it is that you want it to do is if it gets too if you lose frames. All right.
Good.
Did you have
That's
anything,
that.
Reaver?
No, no, it's all good. I haven't had the issue, but I normally fill in those details anyway. So
Oh,
yeah,
you
don't know
normally
why I
put
haven't
yours
seen it.
in manually?
Yeah, you don't have to enter those numbers either. You can just change the altitude, and it'll read from your as long as you've downloaded the flight plan. Yeah,
Yeah.
some brief. So when he in the FMC, when he put in the flight level 350, and then he put in the degrees and the wind and all that, you can just put in change the altitude for each of the three levels you want, and then hit forecast. I can't remember what it was there, and then the button
Yeah.
it'll go to some brief and get the other details and fill it in for you. As long as you have your PMDG set up like to download the weather part of your profile. All you could do is change the flight level in his picture right now.
So
Change your flight levels, and then click on request, and it'll fill in the degrees and the knots for
yeah,
you
so I think what
from.
he's saying is why this screen is blank right here and doesn't have anything. If you put your degrees in here, and, right,
Yeah.
and then put in. I think what he's saying is why this screen is blank. If you put in the degrees here, leave this blank, and then hit request, it will pull those off of that. That is another way to do it too. Because then it will pull these numbers. We just did it the other way because I was speaking with the dev and he did it that way. But yeah, I think that's what Reaver's talking about is he just fills these numbers in, leaves these blank, and then hits request so that it telling the FMC to pull from your sim brief the direction and speed based on those three altitudes.
Yeah, that's great.
So if you're looking at your sim brief
It
profile,
really doesn't matter on the other two. It would be your flight as long as your top one, the flight level 350, matches your cruise level.
yes, yes. The other two are just these other two, like flight level 200 and flight level. This is technically flight level 1000. It just always adds an extra zero. These are just like helpers. They're literally just helpers for the plane.
Yeah, because generally you're gonna be descending through those levels, so they're not gonna affect you much at all. But say if you've got a long approach, long star or something like that, that you're coming into airport and you're going to be at say 10,000 for quite a while, then pick that as one of those altitudes. So you could have you ideally your cruise altitude, whatever your approach altitude's going to be, and then your final sort of into the ILS or something like that.
So that's what, like I said, that's what fixed the issue for me.